Hello, and welcome to the Alpine Valley School podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gallivan. This is episode 49 of our show, and we're talking about the transition to Sudbury schooling from unschooling, with our very special guest, Houston Sudbury School co-founder, Cara DeBusk. Thanks for tuning in. You can find show notes for this episode at alpinevalleySchool.com/podcast/EP49 for episode 49. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit more about Alpine Valley School. We are a private K-12 school located in Denver, Colorado that follows a self-directed democratic education model, also known as the Sudbury model. On this podcast, we discuss our model of education, share stories from day-to-day life at school, and interview graduates of our program on their experiences. If you'd like to share your thoughts with the show, you can reach us at podcast@alpinevalley.school.com, or you can find Alpine Valley School on virtually all social media by searching for our name. If you'd like to come visit, we host open houses several times a year, and we have one, in fact, coming up this weekend. You can find out more information about these events on our website, alpinevalley.school.com. Here's today's episode. Cara DeBusk was an unschooling mom with a young child in Houston, Texas, when she first discovered the Sudbury model. At first, she was put off by all the rules, and by the structure of the Judicial Committee in particular. JC, for those who may not know, is a system within Sudbury schools that handles complaints of rule violations. We've done a full episode on the Judicial System in the past, which you can find in the show notes. Cara and I sat down for an interview about her journey into self-directed education and how she and her husband decided that the Sudbury model was for them. Here's Cara.
My name is Cara DeBusk, and I'm a co-founder of Houston Sudbury School, and I'm currently on staff full-time here at the school, and I'm also the parent of one of our students. I came in to Sudbury as an unschooler. I had been a teacher for almost 20 years, and looking back, see that informed my decision quite a lot. I had an older daughter who I enrolled in Montessori school, so she had been in Montessori school and actually did it all through high school. She's in college now. So I had already taken one step in the direction of an alternative. But when I had my second daughter, kind of late in life, I realized I really wanted to do something even more different, and had been one of the kinds of people who had said I would never homeschool my children. And it turns out I actually did want to homeschool my child. And I was lucky enough to have a pediatrician who, coming to her first home visit, I had a home birth, wore a T-shirt that said, "Unschooling is revolutionary." And I looked at her T-shirt and, of course, said, "What's unschooling?" And that started me on that path. So I did a ton of research. And, of course, in my research, I encountered Sudbury. And at the time, I had an infant and a toddler and a young child, and it wasn't particularly relevant. And I focused my energy on building an unschooling community here in Houston, which went really well for a while. But I realized I was becoming the curator of her life, and that too much of what she wanted to do was dependent on me. Although on one level that makes sense with a 4-year-old, as she grew a little bit older, I was anticipating not wanting to do that, and in fact, handicapping her in some ways by continuing to do that. When I saw some of my friends who were unschoolers having to coordinate play dates for their teenagers, I became pretty concerned about what the future held for us. So I felt like I sort of encountered some limitations in unschooling in terms of what I wanted for my daughter and what kind of independence I wanted her to have. So at that point, I started looking into Sudbury schools. There had been some people in Houston who were interested in starting a Sudbury school, but it had not gone any further than a Facebook group. And so I started hosting meetups at my house. And these were just, come meet up, let's talk about what Sudbury is, let's read some books, let's feel out interest, let's just sort of generally talk about what this is. And at the same time, I started visiting other schools, primarily Clearview Sudbury School in Austin being the most convenient one. I remember distinctly that first visit to Clearview. And I had in my mind a picture of what Sudbury might be like, and I found it very appealing. I had a lot of concerns about all the rules, and I have had some concerns about judicial committee, and I had some concerns about how was it actually kind of restrictive. And I remember walking into Clearview and just being overwhelmed by how relaxed the kids were, how competent and confident they all were. And I sat there watching students organize. I watched a 7-year-old organize a field trip to a candy store. And I remember being very struck by that, because that's the kind of thing in the unschooling community that parents would have organized. That the child would have said, I want to go to the candy store, and the parents would have made that happen. But I watched the 7-year-old work through the process of how do I find out who wants to go? And how do I check people off? And how do I make sure I've asked everyone? And she stopped by Kimberly a few times and asked for a little bit of advice, but she ultimately did it herself. And I remember leaving that day and Andrew, my partner, and I talking and saying, even if our child does not want to attend this kind of school, we have to make one of these schools. Like, Houston needs one of these schools. The families in Houston, the kids in Houston need this. We were really clear, or at least I was really clear, that we wanted a Sudbury school. And I think it's important to define that when you're starting. Other approaches are completely valid, are completely wonderful. I would love for every city to have many, many choices for families around how their kids are educated. But I was really clear that I wanted a Sudbury school. So there was a process, which was sometimes quite painful, of winnowing away, chipping away at the aspects of our project that were not in alignment with Sudbury. So I have no concerns about the rules. And in fact, it took, like with everyone who encountered Sudbury for the first time, it took a little bit of deschooling, I guess you would say, for me to realize that students really are involved in these decisions, and they in fact want these rules, that it's not an imposition on them. If it's a healthy Sudbury community, and everyone I have seen is a healthy Sudbury community, every school I've visited, they want the rules. They want to feel safe, and they want to feel like they have recourse, and they want to feel like there is a container for their freedom that is logical. But what I see are kids who are happy and free and safe and respected and happy to go to JC for the most part and happy to serve and really, really appreciate having an immediate system of justice that is compassionate and thoughtful and fair available to them.
As Cara observed, we've also found a lot of overlap between the Sudbury schooling community and the unschooling one. We both believe that children should be respected and trusted with their lives, and be free to pursue their interests for as long or as short as they would like. Often, the transition to a Sudbury school is less drastic for families that are already unschooling. That does it for our episode covering the transition to Sudbury schooling from unschooling. As a reminder, you can view the show notes for this episode by visiting alpinevalleySchool.com/podcast/EP49 for episode 49, where you can also find out more about Cara's school in Houston, along with many other resources. Thank you to Cara and the Houston Sudbury School for all their help with this episode. If you have an idea for an episode, a question, or comment, drop us a line at podcast@alpinevalleySchool.com or reach out to us on social media. And remember, we do have an open house coming up this weekend if you are interested, and you are very welcome to attend. Our next episode is the 50th episode of this podcast. Can you believe it? I'm cooking up something special, so it may take a little time to put together, but I promise it will be worth the wait. As always, thanks for listening. I'm Mark Gallivan. This is the Alpine Valley School podcast, and we'll be back again soon with more stories of real learning for real life.